Hello and welcome everybody. This is Jörn from Startuprad.io. As you can see, we are on video today. Well, if you just hear the audio podcast, just imagine it. And I'm here, of course, for our first video of Securitysutra together with Gareth.
Hello everybody. I'm sure you guys are happy to see me back or hear back from me. We'll have an interesting conversation with Yanis today for you. But I think Jörn should do the introduction. He's much better at introducing people.
Yes, of course. And as you can see, we do have our honored guest here today. He came all the way from Israel just for us, right?
Exactly.
Can you just briefly introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Yaniv Miron. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Fenrir 7, and we're dealing with the cyber of lateral movement detection.
That sounds pretty interesting, and truth be told, there's nothing I could think about what that actually should be. But before that, we should say a few words because we're right now here in Frankfurt. As the people who are watching this as a video can see, in the back there are like Lego bricks, and this is simply for the reason we are at Co-work and Play here, who gave us a home for today. And it's a co-working space, and they are actually providing space for like the big kids like us with big Lego bricks, and there's a big Jenga game down there which you cannot see, and also there is like childcare at the same time if you want to do co-working. So if you come to Frankfurt with a kid, take a look at Co-work and Play. And so you are doing a startup.
Yes.
There's nothing else you could be doing, right? Or
No.
how did you actually end up there?
Well, when you're doing a startup, first of all, you're fully booked with the startup. And the thing is, I was working in different security firms throughout my life. And I figured out that once you hack into an organization, nobody detects you when you're inside. And then I said, okay, then I have an idea how to actually detect hackers and other threats inside an organization. And then I just quit my job, extracted off my possible liquid funds, and got an office, got an equipment, and just start coding.
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take to set up like the legal framework of your company in Israel?
So actually, in Israel, there's law offices that are pretty open for startups. They will, if you convince them that you're going to be a successful startup, they're going to actually give you some sort of frame of I don't know, 5,000 euros or something to support you. Of course, you're going to have to pay them back in the future, and it probably takes about 2 to 3 weeks to set up a legal frame, get a registered company ID, get the founders agreement and all that, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And how hard was it for you to find like investors? Because I can imagine when you say, okay, I work for security firm A, B, and C, and now I have a cool idea. I liquidated all of what I've got. I got an office, and now give me some millions. That wasn't exactly the way it worked, right?
No, not really. So the way it works is when you're building some sort of an alpha version and you have some sort of slide deck that explains about your.
For like, there are also non-coders like me who are watching this. Could you define what an alpha version is for you?
Definitely. So alpha is the most basic way of your solution. It could even deal with one type of detection if it's a detection mechanism. So you need to have something which is bare minimum. So if I'll compare it to building a building, you need to define where would the building be and own the land. That's sort of the alpha of the building. Now you don't have anything built yet, but that's basically you know what you're going to do and where you're going to do it.
Okay.
Then the next step is to approach investors, and investors will mostly be nice to you, at least in the way that they behave. But the thing is, they will send you to do a lot of tasks. Some of the tasks are relevant, and some of the tasks are just to burn your time. So you really need to know if the task will help you in the future, and understand that most likely they will not invest in you. So when you're doing a task, think carefully if you want to do it or not. And we actually said no to some crazy tasks that investors gave us. Now, sometimes when you do the tasks, they're going to give you more tasks. So they're going to give you, for example, a task that will say, give me five people from the industry, from the relevant industry. In our case, it's cyber. That will recommend that they need that startup. You're going to bring 5 of them, then they're going to say, oh, that's nice, but we need 5 more. And you just worked your ass out to actually get those initial 5. So at that point, you need to know to just leave that VC and continue on.
I see. And as the there's a question from
I
there.
have, yeah, I mean, working in VCs, okay, it's easier to explain like a product that is, an app or a software or ERP software. But how do you explain a security software to a VC, and do they get it? Do they understand what they're investing in? And then is it a problem communicating, like, because this is a really highly technical product, and most VCs okay, I don't want to say most VCs, but a lot of the VC firms, they don't really get security. For that matter, most people don't get security, IT security, network security. So is it easy to communicate your ideas to a VC?
Well, I would say it depends on the VC. There are certain VCs that learned about cyber and they're pretty aware of the topics and technologies that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, some VCs they know nothing about cyber, and then you sort of teaching them, and sometimes the way that you teach them could help you get an investment, but sometimes they will just use you to learn about the market. So you need to really figure out, first of all, if that specific VC is relevant for your area.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it would be recommended that he already aware of cyber.
Right.
And then the second thing, and by the way, you can check it by his previous investments. So if they invested in cyber companies, then they probably have some sort of an idea. It doesn't mean that they're experts, but they have some sort of an idea. And then if it's a VC that is not aware of cyber and they're trying to learn, you need to feel them and understand if they really want to learn on cyber because they want to invest in you, because they believe in your company, or because they just want to, want you to educate them.
Okay. Thanks.
That goes pretty much along with a question, with a statement that I've gotten from someone who failed with his startup, and he said he frequently cut those processes short with consultants, with investors and stuff like this. And I said, okay, tell me like 3 startups you've worked with in the past and the people and the phone numbers I can speak to.
Yes.
And usually that's a pretty good way to kind of sort out consultants, investors, and all this stuff. But I was actually a little bit joking when you came here and I was saying you just came for us. Of course, we are honored to have you here, but you're actually a subsidiary, an office, a branch of your company is located here in Frankfurt.
Exactly.
This is very interesting, and I would like to ask you why you actually decided that.
So it was kind of a complex decision. We wanted as a company to start expanding outside of Israel. And usually companies from Israel expand to the US, first of all, either to the East Coast or to the West Coast, but to the US. We thought that it would be wiser to a startup like us to start expanding in Europe because it's pretty close to Israel. It's 4.5 hours flight. Compared to flying to the US, it could be 12 or 15 hours. And then in Europe specifically, we thought, should we focus in the UK, Germany, or actually Scandinavia? And then after we did all of our math, we decided it's better to focus on the mainland at the moment because then it's easier to expand to other countries. And the largest main country in the mainland is Germany. So that's how we picked Germany. Mm-hmm. And then we started thinking, should we do it in Berlin? Should we do it in Frankfurt, in Munich? Where should we do? Where should we start? And we had a discussion with an accelerator in Frankfurt called the Frankfurt Accelerator. And they actually said, there's a lot of companies in Frankfurt that are pretty open for startups. They're looking for cyber solutions. They're looking for fintech solutions. So come over and see how it goes. And we actually we flew here. I think it was September 2016. And we saw that there are actually customers that are pretty open for new technologies, and most of the companies that we spoke with, at least the manager speaks fluent English, which is also an advantage for us. And then we said, okay, then Frankfurt it is. And since then we're here.
Mm. Just two comments on that on speaking English here. I know Gareth is a very good English speaker, and his German is getting more and more advanced, but he's still getting along a lot with English around here.
That's true, yes.
That's true. And also two more numbers I learned, like there are more than 60,000 American expats in the Rhine-Main area alone, which is like also a legacy of the US Army. They used to be here, but also since they're very good connections with the Frankfurt airport. And the other side of the coin is like I was once curious, and I was looking at the business development website of the Frankfurt Rhine-Main area, like Frankfurt Rhine-Main Marketing, and they actually stated that there are like 37,000 consultants here in more than 2,000 companies all the time. And well, if you are a consultant, you have to speak like every fifth word in English, otherwise people don't take you seriously. So English is also pretty good there. But actually, you came to us to talk a little bit about cybersecurity and which special part in there you are doing. And he gave us like a very short description where I actually didn't understand anything, admittedly, but we talked before. And can you, like for the very dumb people like me, explain a little bit more what your company actually does?
Okay, so today it takes around 300 days to detect an attacker that penetrated your network.
That means you have like a firewall.
Yes.
Somebody got in.
Somebody got in.
And they spend like almost a year in your network.
Exactly. Before the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer, which is in charge of dealing with those issues, is aware of it. Mm-hmm. And you can compare it to let's say, a country with borders. And just imagine it will take 300 days to understand that a terrorist crossed the border. That's just crazy, right? He can do a lot of damage in 300 days. And 300 is just a number, because some firms that produces reports on that number will say 412, some firms will say 220, some will say 179. It's just a number, but it's important to understand that it's a big number.
Is it like during all of those, like let's say 300 days, this attacker actually circumvented your security stuff, all your security barriers, and can like 300 days in a row download your data and grab all your documents and stuff like that? Is it like that?
Well, part of the time he's actually, the attacker moves from one machine to another. So let's say that he hacked into the secretary's computer. Mm-hmm. He then will try to move to the file server, and from there to the database, from there to the IT manager machine, and so on and so forth. So part of the time in those 300 days he's actually using to control more and more machines. And part of the time he's actually extracting data or doing damage. Mm. So what we're doing at Fenrir 7 is we're actually lowering the time that it takes to detect those threats. So it could be a manual threat as a manual hacker, just a person that got upset. It could be an external hacker, or it could be an internal employee, because if you're a bank and you have 10,000 employees, they're not always happy, not all of them, right? So if an employee got upset because, I don't know, his boss didn't raise his salary when he asked to, he might say, okay, I'm going to get revenge now, and start hacking from the inside. So we actually take those 300 days and we lower them to less than 24 hours. So we're able to detect those threats in less than 24 hours and alert the security manager that could deal with them fast. We do it pretty fast and pretty accurate compared to the current solutions. And the way that we do it is we're actually monitoring the network. So every packet that is being sent, and when two computers are having a conversation, a virtual conversation, they're sending packets from one to another. We actually listen to those packets and we're able to understand if something bad happens there. And if we understand that something bad happens, then we alert the security manager that could deal with that fast.
Oh, so many questions. Where should I start? Like the first one, what came to my mind when you've been talking about internal threats? Like Germany bought like a lot of data CDs from people who had like not in Germany declared income of Swiss accounts. And it was like almost always that someone from the internal IT department like got this data together, put it on a CD, and then send it to the German tax authorities. Would a system like yours also work in those circumstances?
Well, it really depends if the attacker had access to that data before or not. If he already had access, you can't really prevent them from stealing it. At the end of the day, you know, you can put whatever technology you have, person just to take a camera and take photos of the computer screen and leak the information. But if he didn't have access and he had to hack his way to that data, then we can help that organization detect him pretty fast and accurate before he's actually doing what he was intended to do.
Okay, and the next thing that I was thinking is when you said you listen to those data packages, the first thing that came to my mind, some people like fintechs and banks now will jump up. Can you listen to all of my traffic? Oh my God. We discussed it before, but can you a little bit explain more how you actually listen to it and how much of this data gets out of a client network?
Okay, so regarding the question how much data get out of the client network is total zero. There is pretty strict privacy laws in Germany. Of course, I'm not aware of all of them, but from the customers that we've contacted and having engagement with, we understood that it's extremely important not to extract data at all. Regarding the listening to the traffic, so we're actually connecting ourselves to the core switch in the enterprise. The core switch is the main security, the main network equipment that actually manages all the other network equipments in the organization.
That's usually something like a big room with all the cables and stuff.
Exactly.
Ah, been there one point in time.
Exactly. Okay. And then we just get one cable to our appliance. And that cable sends a copy of each and every packet that goes through this big switch. And then we actually process it and show results. Now, just to make sure all the data on our appliance is fully encrypted. So even if there was unencrypted data floating through the organization from one machine to another, when it gets to our appliance, we encrypt it. So even if somebody will steal the hard drive of our appliance, he'll not be able to use it because it's fully encrypted by industry standards. Regarding privacy laws, we're not targeting specific persons, but we're looking at a unit as an IP address. So it's not that, you know, Yog did something bad.
I never do.
But it's IP 1.2.3.4 did something bad. And then if the security manager decides internally to reveal to his team what happened, well, that's the organization's policies.
Before I hand over to Gareth, who has obviously a lot of questions, I can see it in his face. There's just one thing that came to my mind when you talked about the German data security laws. I was at the entrepreneurs table, round table. It's like a monthly event every month here in Frankfurt, and there was an entrepreneur from the US. The name just escaped my mind. I'm really sorry about it. And he was talking about building up a startup in Germany, and he said it's pretty easy when you comply with all the data protection laws in Germany, you comply all over the world.
Well, it sounds that he's right because at least from what we know, the laws are extremely strict, and we had to sign a lot of documents to start working with one of the banks here. But at the end of the day, we also understand that those laws and policies are needed, and as a company, it's not too hard for us to fit into them because we don't want to be a big brother that monitors everybody. We just want to help them protect from the bad guys. And that goes along with the German policies.
Mm-hmm. Gareth's questions.
Right. Well, I mean, I had a few technical questions, but before I get to those technical questions, can you, with your solution, can you also track what a particular IP is doing? Or let's say, I have, okay, maybe it's your database is populated with all the different IP addresses in a particular, in a particular subnet, or I don't know, in a particular network. Can you actually see, okay, does it act like a sniffer also? Like you can see, okay, these packets are being sent out by this particular IP. He's contacting this website. Does it maintain a log of that, and is it available to the network admins?
Okay, so what we do is the old concept of cyber solutions would be to generate a long list of alerts. The thing with that long list of alerts is that the security analyst that sits and monitors those alerts get bored pretty quickly because he needs to read thousands of lines every hour.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, they can't do it anymore. They're just staring at a screen, but they're not actually looking at it. So we're actually showing it in a different view. We're drawing some sort of a map. And in that map, every machine, every IP is a small icon of a computer, and every attack from those machines is a line. So if you're going to see two computers and a line between them, you're going to see that computer A attacked computer B because it goes to where the arrow is directed. Now, each and every line has different colors. So if it's blue, it means reconnaissance, which means somebody was trying to collect data on a victim before he's actually executing an attack. If it's a red arrow, that means exploitation, which means that computer A actually hacked into computer B and got control of computer B, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, you're going to see a huge map with all of the machines, and the connections between them are actually the attacks. Now, we don't need to have a list of IPs because our appliance is also acting as a sniffer, as you said, and we collect the data as it goes through the wires. So we don't need to maintain or get an initial list of IPs. We just extract them from the packets that travels the wires.
And since this is a huge, let's say, if you're mirroring all the ports in even like a mid-sized company, it generates to one port, it generates a huge amount of data, just gajillions and gajillions of gigabytes of data coming through maybe not every second, but every hour, let's say. And you have an appliance that is scanning through all this data and using some heuristic to calculate if there's a threat or not. But like, how is it? I mean, how scalable is it? Like, what's the maximum number of computers, or what's the maximum amount of traffic your appliance can monitor at one time? And if, let's say, there are multiple locations in a company, and there are multiple infrastructures for each location, multiple system admins, is there a way to link your appliance with all the other ones and then have like a management console set up?
So actually, what we have to solve that problem, we call it the multi-site version. And in there, the main owner of the system gets control on all of the appliances that we deploy. So if you need 10, 20, 50 appliances, you actually log into the control panel, and you're going to see a drop-down list of each and every appliance. So you can either pick global, and global will do the average of all the appliances, or you can pick a specific appliance, let's say Frankfurt or Berlin or Stuttgart, and it will show you that specific appliance. So you can have a deep dive into a specific appliance, or you can look at the global appliance, and of course they all speak with each other. So that helps us solve the amount of appliances that needs to be monitored. Instead of monitoring each and every one of them specifically, you can monitor them from one screen. Now regarding the amount of gigabytes, so an average appliance that we have contains one port of fiber, which means 10 gigabit per second, and 3 ports of regular network RJ45 copper, which means 1 gigabit per second. So you can connect 4 different networks into that appliance. Of course, that's the default off-the-shelf appliance. And if there is a specific customer that needs 20 gigs per appliance or 40 gigs, we're of course going to custom-made build in that appliance. Because we're just selling the software. The hardware is off-the-shelf hardware. So if he needs more, he just order 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 extra network cards with the appliance, and that's how we solve it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for the explanation. And I know a little bit about this product from our previous conversation, but just for the benefit of the listeners. So you have this huge sniffer, and you know, this is a wonderful appliance. This is a wonderful technology because this sort of comes into play after your firewall has failed, after the hacker has gone past your firewall or social engineered his way into your network somehow. And most, let's say, regular security or most system admins or CISOs, of course they know their stuff, but a lot of the staff that is hired, they know the basics of networking and network security, but they don't really know how these exploits work. Does your appliance also tell the system admin, like, okay, there's a potential breach in this part of the network on this particular system, and this is the breach, this is what the guy used to get in, and this is what he's been doing?
So we have 2 different views. You can get the higher up view, and in there you'll get a general explanation of, you know, IP A attacked IP B, or machine A attacked machine B. They did it with exploitation techniques, for example, and then there is a short explanation about what happened in plain English, not in technical English, but just plain English, and then a short explanation of what we recommend to do. Now, if you're gonna dive into that specific event, you will get the full forensics information, and for that you need to be an expert with networking and security to actually understand the path of what we showed you in the forensics. If you want to do it, that's perfect. If you don't want to do it or you don't have the skills, that's still fine, because you get all of your information in plain English. So you can just look at it and stop there instead of drilling down into the event.
Yeah, I guess, you know, at that point, if you don't want to deal with it, just save your data on a different, you know, back up your data and just get a different system and restore the system. And from what I understood about Fendover's system, it's based on a heuristic, and that is something that you have developed yourself and something that is patented. But I mean, just for the benefit of our listeners, could you maybe in simpler terms explain, you know, what is a heuristic and how exactly does your system or differ from a firewall? Because most people don't really understand what a firewall is. I'm sure some people do, but you know, for those who want to understand, you know, how is your system different from a firewall?
Okay, so basically what happens with the firewall looks through the traffic and then he matches a list of rules that he had. So for example, if port 123 should not be connected, the firewall will just disconnect that port. Now, it's not that difficult to bypass firewalls these days. And then once you're inside, systems like us should detect you. Now, with heuristics, it's kind of a new approach compared to the old signature-based approach. A signature-based approach, which most of the antiviruses are actually using, is an approach that says, okay, I have a huge database with signatures of exploits or signatures of bad things. And when I'm saying a signature, that means that they took a piece of a code of an exploit, let's say 5, 10, 20 digits, and then they put it in a database. And they're saying if there's going to be another network traffic that will match those 20 characters in that exact order, then we're going to mark it as malicious. Now, that was good, through the 90s or early 2000, but then hackers understood that they could easily bypass those matched signatures. And just a simple example of how to bypass them. Let's say that the hacker needs a room of 300 bytes in the code to push some malicious data. To get to the number 300, you have endless number of ways. So 300 could be represented as 299 plus 1. It could be 400 minus 100. So the thing is, the current companies, the signature that they've placed, let's say, says if somebody is looking for 300 bytes, then block him and alert. And that works if somebody is looking for specifically 300 bytes. But if somebody is looking for 299 and then looking for another one, they will not alert.
Right.
So it's easy to bypass those rules. And hackers actually understand that, and they do it pretty easily. They just generate a new variant every time they're using an attack, and that variant uses different mathematics to get to the number that they want. Now with heuristics, the concept is instead of having fixed signatures, is to have something which is more vague. It says, for example, with signature, you will say, I'm looking for port 55. If somebody is using port 55, then alert. With heuristics, you might say, well, if somebody is in the range of 0 to 20, do A. If somebody between 21 and 1000, do B, and so on and so forth. So it's a broader scale. And also, you don't need to define things specifically. You can define vague things instead of a specific signature. Another thing that we do, we're actually using machine learning, because heuristics is the basic of our engine, and it's the most important part. But we also know that as experts as we are, there are things that might skip us or that we might not know. So we're using machine learning to understand the unknown threats, the unknown unknowns, as they're being called.
And these machine learning rules, is the machine learning algorithm on the appliance, or is it something that you're using machine learning in your labs to analyze new threats and then coming up with new versions or releases of the of your software and then pushing it out to your existing systems? I mean, is the machine learning that, let's say, like, is it on the fly, or is it something that's happening and then based on that new rules or new updates are being generated?
Well, we're building the baseline of the machine learning in our labs, and that's being shipped with the solution to the customer. And then while the customer is working, we're trying to extract new features out of the customer's data. Again, this is not our major part in the solution, but it helps to have that feature in addition to our main heuristic engine.
Okay, thank you for that. So what I'm going to do now is try and channel the conversation or change the conversation more towards how your appliance or how your solution is relevant in our today's day and age, especially with these. I'm sure everybody must have heard of the ransomware attacks that have happened in the recent past. In the UK and then more recently in all the global corporations. And as an expert, would you be able to tell us how did these attacks happen? How were the attackers able to get in and take over so many different systems? Was there one particular exploit? I'm sure it was so many different systems of multiple different exploits. They were able to stay there for a long time, I'm assuming, and then launch an attack simultaneously. And how your solution could have prevented that. I mean, first of all, how did they get in? how was it coordinated, and how could your solution have benefited the people here?
So there is two, I would split ransomware into two major types.
Mm-hmm.
There is the regular ransomware that you just, surf in a website that downloads some malicious content to your machine
Yeah.
and then encrypts it. It could be just a regular user surfing from home, it could be a corporate, and then what happens is that you download and extract a malicious file and then it encrypts your machine. For that, antiviruses or endpoint security should help you prevent it. But that's usually not doing most of the damage in enterprises. What happens in enterprises, in the most advanced ransomwares, is that they're not just being downloaded and encrypting that machine, that specific one machine. They're actually moving in your organization, deploying themselves as a server internally in your organization, and then start to attack other machines from that server internally.
Is this automated or is somebody doing it?
Mostly automated,
Oh wow, okay.
but some of it could be controlled by a human.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that you have something inside your network starting to move and encrypt machines. And for that case, it's been called ransomware next generation.
Mm-hmm.
For that, we can help and assist the organization detect it fast. Now, we never offer 100% security because there's no such thing. Hackers will always be better than the defenders.
Right.
Because the defenders, let's say out of 1,000 attacks, to win, the defenders needs to actually succeed in 1,000 out of 1,000. For hackers to win, they need to win one out of 1,000. So it's pretty difficult for the defending side. But still, you need to try and mitigate your risk. So what we're telling to our customers is some of your devices will get infected, but not a lot of them. And that will not do a colossal damage to your organization because we will detect it pretty fast. So yes, you will have one or two machines encrypted, but that's it.
But not like the entire network is
Not
compromised and somebody's like, okay, pay us X million euros in our bank account by tomorrow, or we wipe out everything.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Okay. And how has, since you described, okay, the last big security event that I remember in my memories, I'm kind of dated, my knowledge is dated in a way, but what I remember is Code Red, that worm just spread like wildfire, and this was I think like 2000 or 2001, something like that. And how has the nature of threats and nature of hackers and these worms that self-replicate or attack various like the situation you just explained. They set up a server and that server tries out, scans the entire network, tries out different exploits in the network, identifies, okay, this is going to work, this is not going to work. And this is pretty sophisticated. I mean, from what I remember, it had to be done manually and people had to spend a lot of time. And since this is being done this process has been automated, and I'm sure the threats and the nature of threats has also changed, and the way people are getting in has also changed. Let's say like SQL injections were relatively rare 10 years ago, now it's pretty much everywhere. So how has the security landscape changed in the past few years?
I think it became, the goals are changed now.
Mm-hmm.
The attackers are different and the ease of use is different. And when I'm saying the goals in the past for hackers, they just try to hack an organization to put some sort of defacement and say, I own you,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. But they're not doing a lot of damage. These days, hackers are not wasting their precious time on just defacing websites or defacing organizations. They do it from economical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually, that's their work, to do bad, to hack into organizations and blackmail them or steal their information and sell it, in the darknet or whatever. So that's actually becomes a profession. Regarding the type of attackers in the past, it was just kids that wanted to learn. Today you have skilled people that it doesn't mean that they like what they're doing, but they know how to do it, and that's why they do it. And regarding the ease of use, in the past you had to know different programming skills. You had to have programming skills. You had to know specific tools. You had to write a lot of code by your own, uh, and get to the right forums or to the right IRC connections to channels to get some data and information. These days, you can in 2 or 3 clicks download an entire exploitation tool for free. You don't need to be an expert. You don't need to know any programming language. You don't need to know how to install anything. You just download it, click on a few buttons, and then you can attack and hack organizations.
For those of you who are listening who are getting some ideas about doing that, don't do it. These are, first of all, illegal and very expensive to obtain. And also the people who can catch such attacks it's a lot more sophisticated with ISPs collaborating with the government agencies, and the turnaround time with ISPs. Giving the information is very easy. So if you have I don't know if there are script kiddies still in the field. If there are script kiddies, don't do it. I have some more questions. I had written them down, and I would like to, yeah. So,
don't worry, you can read the question and then do it, and we just do count. Don't worry about it. And what time is it?
it's 17:23.
That's pretty fine. So do a few more questions if you like to. Then I'll zoom out and join you again, and then there's just a handful of questions I would have for you, and then we're good, okay? So take your time, we'll edit it, we cut it out, don't worry about it.
Okay, sounds good. So,
just trick is to keep the audio recording and the video recording running, that as they are still synchronized.
right, that's fine. Now, since we here at Startup Radio are focused on startups, are there any specific things that you recommend? What should a startup look for in a hosting provider? And I'm sure, is your solution also available to hosting providers, web hosting providers? And yes, first of all, is your solution available for web hosting providers? And what would you advise new startup founders? What should you look for when looking for a server host?
So I would say our solution fits to every organization above 300 people. We see ourselves as the sort of internal firewall. So like every organization must have a firewall. Every organization must have an internal security. Even in the US, for example, you have the FBI, which is internal, and the CIA, which is external, right? So we usually. So we see ourselves, the firewall is the CIA outside of the organization, we're the FBI, we're inside the organization.
Okay.
Regarding what startups should look like, you mean what startups should look like at customers, or what?
Oh no, let's say there's a startup and they of course they don't want to have a server in their premises, and it's pretty expensive to get a lease line. Most startups, they want to have a host somewhere in, either Amazon, if not Amazon, because Amazon can get pretty expensive really fast. They want to look for a server host somewhere who can, store their server for a few months till they get up to speed. And that is, usually around that time, most startups are not really paying that much attention to security. They just want to push out their product. A lot of testing going on everywhere. There are no firewall rules set up because somebody's shutting down a system, putting up a system, deleting all the firewall rules. But then in that scenario, if there's a lot of experimentation happening, you need a host who will sort of protect you in that scenario. And do you have any advice for startup founders when they're looking for a host to host their servers? Any specific things they should look for to protect themselves? Because you don't want a hacker to get in and say, okay, well, I'm going to delete all your code, all your code versions, unless you pay me X amount.
Okay, so regarding the hosting provider, I would say both Amazon, Microsoft, and Google gives, and maybe IBM on their cloud, gives some sort of benefits for startups. I think you can get 100,000 US dollars from each of them. If you address them, explain your case, explain that you're a startup, they would usually give you a voucher of 100,000 for a year. Now, if you're going to join the Microsoft Accelerator, which I think is also taking part in Germany, we took part in the Israeli one. They actually give you $500,000 for 3 years in Azure, which is their cloud. So I would say you should try and contact them directly or try to join one of their programs to get it. Another option is to use used servers. So a new server could cost, I don't know, 10,000 euros. A used one could cost 500.
Right.
So when we started, our lab was a bunch of crappy old machines. Some of them were second-hand, and that's how we operated until we had enough money to buy new equipment. Now, regarding putting your code in the cloud, I think that if you really want to take care of your code, don't put it online.
Okay.
Just
Obviously, yes.
just keep it offline. But I would say you should always back up your code. So, for example, if you have an Amazon user and you're working on Amazon, have a user there, but then have another user on Google, for example, which is totally different infrastructure. Put the same code over there, use a different user and a different password, and log into that account from a different computer. So if somebody monitoring your keys, you will not be able to monitor them both from the same computer. And that's how you build your redundancy online if you want to do that.
Oh, good. Good tips. And I didn't know that, there were these big corporations offer credits for startups. So I'm sure somebody who's, thinking of doing a startup will benefit from this. So if you're thinking of hosting somewhere, first contact Amazon or Microsoft and try and see if you can get some free service for a few months or for a year. In terms of security-related startups, there are few and far in between. There are app startups everywhere. There's other technology startups everywhere, but security startups, there are few and far in between. And then as soon as there's a startup, there's usually a bigger company trying to swallow it. Let's say Sophos or Norton, or maybe not, Norton or Palo Alto Networks. They will either, of course, startups, they will, they find a much better ecosystem and much better collaboration with these big corporations. But why are there so few security startups? And what challenges do they face usually? And are they able to compete on? Is there a green field market for these security startups? Of course, there's a lot of everything that is happening. I'm talking about more consumer level, not the high-end government level where there's always a market. Are they there? And what are the challenges that they face usually?
So I would say for B2C, business to customer, there's not a lot of demand for security because the security is being built in the operating systems, in the applications, in your cell phone. So I would assume that most, even security experts, will not have antivirus on their cell phone, for example,
Right.
because they assume that there is an inherent security built in there. I'm not saying that it's true or not, but I'm just saying that it seems that the customers are moving away from buying security solutions, and they just expect it to be part of what they're buying anyway. Now with businesses, I can see a high demand for security because when even something small happens there, it could affect their business in tens of millions of euros.
Mm-hmm.
So in there, I can see a high demand for security solutions that will help them mitigate the risk and protect themselves. Regarding security companies that are being bought by larger security companies, I would say that it's tempting. If you started a startup and after a year or two somebody's offering you to be a millionaire, it's tempting to take it. I could say that we at Fenner 7 actually got offers in the past and we said no. And it's pretty hard to say no, but we said no because we believe that we can be a big company by ourselves. We don't want to be bought and merged into a large company, and because sometimes the result of those mergers is just they make you disappear. So
Right.
if you could work with their architecture and everything, then it's being merged to that very big company. But if not, they just buy you and kill you, and that's it.
Oh, they don't want to use your product. They just want to
No.
put you out of business.
Put you out of business.
Oh wow.
So the thing is, you need to have a sort of a roadmap, and if your roadmap is to be a quick billionaire or something, quick millionaire, then maybe it's the right path. But if you want to do something that will actually affect the world and to put your thumb and put your signature on the world, then you need to do something big and not be bought by those large security corporates.
Okay. Okay. Wow. And more about your product, just a product roadmap. Are you going to be sticking to having this product just as an appliance and doing what you're good at, which is detecting hackers that are already there, or do you also have plans of making an appliance which is more like a firewall, which have like a firewall which works together with your appliance, with your current technology? Let's say have an appliance that does universe, there's this term, UTM, Unified Threat Management. It does firewalling, it does spam management, it does, monitors prioritization of traffic, and also then on top of that, threat detection.
Well, usually when you go to a restaurant and you look at the menu of a restaurant, if you can see, pastas and pizzas and it says like Italian restaurant, you would probably assume that it's a good restaurant because they're focused on what they're doing.
Right.
If you're gonna see a restaurant that says, we sell it all,
Right.
then you're gonna see, Indian food and then Chinese food and Italian food and burgers and things like that. You're gonna say, it's probably a mediocre restaurant because it can't be that their chef is expert in everything, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So same thing we see ourselves. We want to focus in lateral movement and the detection of breach of threat inside an organization. And we think that at the moment it's better for us to be focused because we saw other companies that try to do it all, and then they're trying to sell solutions that cost millions of dollars per installation, and it just didn't work out because you can't be an expert in every single little thing.
Right.
And security, logical security as physical security needs to have a lot of layers. So also in that building, you have a lock at the main door. Then you have a receptionist that asks you, why are you here? Then you have another door with another lock, and then you can get into the building. So there's layers of security. And you also have bigger layers of security. You have the police, you have the border control, you have NATO. So you have a lot of security that needed. And each and every part in that security is needed. Those are different parts for different purposes.
And one person cannot do everything.
Exactly. So we see ourselves as part of a holistic view of security in an organization. Keep your firewall, keep your antivirus, keep your SIM, keep your encryption mechanism, and also keep FENR7.
Okay, great.
Well, I just want to thank you guys, and I also want to thank Frankfurt for having us here, for being open for startups, and helping us and communicate with us. And I feel we did the right choice coming here.
Great. There's just one question that went through my mind when I kind of zoomed out of this discussion with the specialists. At the beginning, you've been talking about false alerts and the security analysts getting bored. I would be curious, how high is your hit ratio? So when you send an alert to the security analyst, what probability has it to be a real threat?
So because we're not showing it in alerts, but we're showing it in a drawing, it's kind of funny, but we're telling our customers, if you see a big round thing, because you're going to see a lot of computers with a lot of lines, and it's going to be look like a big round thing. It's a big problem. If it's a small round thing and you're going to see like 2 or 3 computers connected, it's either a small problem or it's our false positives, and we do have false positives. Most security vendors will tell you they have 99.9 success rate. This is total bullshit, because they're just lying with what they're saying, and customers don't buy it anymore. So the customers are not stupid, and they understand that every solution has false positives. And if a customer pushes me to give him a number, I would say, I don't know, we have 30% false positive. So 70% success, 30% false positives. And those 70% is way better than the 0% you have today. Because today you have no detection at all. So would you invest 30% of false positive to detect those other 70% of actual malicious hackers and threats? And they usually say yes.
Okay, just a little bit to kind of get to the end, because what I've taken as like a non-IT guy from your interview was, if you have like different cloud providers, first, never put your code in the internet.
Yes.
Secondly, if you have different cloud providers, use different machines to get access to them. And also make sure your cell phone is secured. Would you add 1 or 2 statements to that you think is sound security advice many people are neglecting right now?
So I would recommend to pick stronger passwords for every user, and pick different passwords. And the second thing is to always update your software. So in the current cell phones, Windows, Linux, Mac, whatever you're using, you can just use automatic updates, because there is a thing called a Patch Tuesday. For example, in Microsoft, it's every second Tuesday they're releasing their patches. And then there is in the hackers community something called Exploit Wednesday, which means that on Wednesday, hackers are actually analyzing the patches that Microsoft releases on Tuesday, and by Wednesday morning they have exploits to use those vulnerabilities that Microsoft just fixed. Now, those who do not update their machines being infected immediately. So you need to update your devices, any kind of device, as soon as possible every time there is an update.
One more question here.
No, not a question, just a comment. And I guess like, Patch Wednesday, Exploit Wednesday is you're essentially asking Microsoft to do your work for you, and make the work of the hackers a lot easier, because they've already given them the patch, so they know exactly what to hit.
Exactly.
Wow, I didn't know about that. That sounds pretty cool, or mean also in a way.
Yeah, there's like a big abyss open just in front of my mental eye for me. And just 2 more questions, and then we can close this interview, because the people who hear this or watch the video don't know this, but we're running the interview, we're bothering you with questions since approximately an hour, and you're holding up very well. Thank you for that. And just 2 questions. We talked about it before. Would you be open if an investor approaches you right now?
Well, we are always open for investment. We're not actively looking for one now, but if there is the right deal, then we would probably take it.
And now comes the curveball, a question I like to do. If you could describe your life as a mixture or a title of mixtures, or something in between either a book title or a movie title, what would it be? So either one of them or a mixture of both, and why would it be the description of your life?
Okay, that's a very interesting. I would use the title hacker. I would base it on the movie Hackers from 1995. And I think that's a movie that affected a lot of young people from my generation. that actually understood and got open to that concept of hacking and hackers. Of course, the movie was not true; it was a fictional movie, but the concepts were real and interesting, and that's why I would pick to use that title from that movie.
Great. That would have been it for me. Gareth, you got more questions?
No, not at the moment.